We've seen the people get blessed. We've seen people fall down. That's nice. But see, after everybody's done falling down, I got to ask the question, what do you do after you get up? Or do you wait so you can fall down again? I don't know. I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I think it's just a valid question.
So where do we go then?
Or as Francis Schaeffer used to say, how shall we live then? What happens then? What becomes the next step along the road?
And how do regular people,
Normal people, and I know normal's relative, but most of you look fairly normal for the most part. How do normal people fit into this big scheme here? How does all this work? I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow night, so I don't want to say too much about that now.
but looking back,
And we talked to Ken, had a good talk with Ken and Lois the other day after we did the television program. And right in the middle of these series of renewal meetings, he chose to stop it. Well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Everybody that I've ever seen like that just kind of wanted to keep it going. Even when it was time to stop it, they wanted to keep it going because that became their proverbial claim to fame.
so it was much easier to try to keep something going
Then just see it for what it was and accept that and run with it. But he chose to stop it. And everybody got upset. Why would you want to stop it? Because now it's time to go to the next level. Now it's time to take what you've received and apply that to a hurting and dying world. See? And there is a time to do that. Some folks never find that time. They live from one experience to the next, and that becomes their life's quest, is the next experience.
So if change is possible, and we've seen it, obviously it is, and people are involved in that, regular people like you and I, what is happening in the United States in our Sunday school has never happened in America before. Still hasn't. 20,000 people a week, and that's just kids 12 and under. That doesn't include youth, doesn't include the church, because as far as I'm concerned, adults don't count.
I don't mean nothing by that, but you can do with it whatever you choose to do.
And so looking back at not really having a model, not really seeing something like this happen before, especially in New York, and because of where it is, because of the size of the Sunday school, and because I'm the pastor, which makes no sense to most people.
Because I'm way beyond comprehension for most people. I like it like that. People can't figure out how somebody that looks, acts, and talks like me can do what I do. It's a funny thing, isn't it? See, if I look like a preacher, that would be explainable. If I acted like one, however they act, then of course the word act is simply as a point of reference.
And if it's like people pray, they said, we're going to pray for your voice, that it will be healed. I said, don't do that.
Don't do that. If I ever got a haircut and my voice got healed, I'd have to have a new ministry because nobody would know who I was. So I'd have to start all over again. I said, don't pray, I'll be fine. I wrecked my voice when I was a kid preaching on the street without a mic.
So if indeed God still uses people, which he appears to do,
I don't understand why God chose that. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like there would have been a better way, but I guess that's why I'm not God. Seems like there would have been a more effective and efficient way to reach the world, but you and I are it. I'm not real thrilled with that, but I guess this is what we got, so then we have to choose, don't we?
if God still chooses to use people, then what then becomes? The circumstances?
The factors.
Are there any? Is there some sort of a common denominator?
I think so. I think so. When I first started in New York, I thought if I could just get there, if I could just get it started, that'd be the hard thing, you know? Getting in, getting settled, had no support, no backing, no staff, no buildings, nothing. I thought if I could just get started,
Then I could get. Now I've been there almost 20 years. I used to think the hardest thing was.
starting. Hardest thing wasn't starting. You know what the hardest thing is? It's finishing. See, those are always the two hardest things in life. And if you're wise, you'll remember that. Because the two hardest things in life are always starting and finishing. Everything in between has a way of kind of sorting itself out, doesn't it? You can start strong. I watched a lot of guys start strong. Not too many finish strong. My home pastor who raised me started strong. He committed suicide. There's not a whole lot I haven't seen in this life, folks. It's almost a running joke now back at home. Show me something I haven't seen and I'll go look at it. You'll be hard-pressed.
So, looking at the starting, what it took to get it where it is today, how it's evolved, how it has taken on really a life of its own now all over the world.
Primary example of the folks you've heard speak tonight.
So, where does that
Leave all of us here.
Does God actually do something?
Out of nothing.
Does change, does revival just... Maybe. Maybe. And if it does, that's a bonus. But in my study,
To me, I've only seen that really happen once, and that was in the creation process. Read it for yourself. You know, that whole process in the Hebrew, the ex nihilo, out of nothing. It happened one time, folks. And you know, after that, the miracles sort of took a different turn, didn't they? They really did. Even in the life of Jesus. Sometimes he spit on the ground and made mud. Use that.
sometimes he took water and
Changed it. Sometimes he took some bread and some fish and did some things with that. But somehow there always had to be a factor, wasn't there? Some sort of an extrinsic factor that if he could take it
and use it, don't miss this, take it and use it, somehow something changed. Are you with me? You with me? Slap yourself. Slap the person next to you. Tell them, listen to the man. Somehow he was able to take something, use the word change, use the word convert, whatever word you choose to pick. Make it as definitive as you want to use it. But somehow something was taken and change came. Now, the Ark of the Covenant
had been stolen. The Philistines had a great revelation. They noticed that whenever the Israelites had the Ark of the Covenant out front, the Israelites won the battle. If they did not have the Ark, they lost. Most of you know a little of the history of the Ark. In it was kept the Ten Commandments, the golden pot of manna, and Aaron's rod that budded.
But the real essence of the ark, as you know, was the representation, the literal physical representation of what?
Presence of God. Okay? Presence of God.
So when the presence of God, don't miss this, when the presence of God was there, everything seemed to have changed, wasn't it? The outcome of battles. Because that seems to be what the presence of God does. So the Philistines, being the rocket scientists that they were, came to the conclusion, if we can steal the ark,
Then we'll win. They saw what happened to the Israelites. Israelites have the box, they win. Philistines go, we get the box, we win. It makes sense. Problem was, and for those of you that are familiar with that part of history, they stole the ark, and then their problems started. Didn't quite go exactly the way they thought it was going to go.
and every city, every location that the ark was put, there was all kinds of problems and issues, and
After a while, nobody wanted the ark in their city. And so the thing just kind of got shuffled around from place to place, kind of like the nuclear waste sites in New Jersey. Everything just kind of, nobody wants it in their spot. And so,
the ark turned out to be like that. Well, now, David comes into power. He's king. And one of the first things he wants to do is bring
the ark back into its rightful place. It's a good thing. Makes sense.
let's get the ark. And by doing that, what he's saying is, let's bring back
The presence of God.
Amen? You with me? Let's bring back the presence of God. Well, there's one problem. See, they're going to have a festival, and rightfully so, festival celebration, because this is going to be a turning point in the history of God's people. So now, after all these years, the presence of God returns. Let's have a celebration. Well, it's going to take time to prepare for this festival, for the celebration. It's going to take about 3 months to prepare, to do it right. So, for 3 months, David has to figure out
Where to put the ark. They've got to clean the place up. They've got to prepare. They're going to have the festival. Then the tabernacle will be set up.
and the ark will be put in its rightful place. But it's going to take 3 months to put this together. So somewhere we've got to put the ark. Now, where do you put the ark?
Where do you put it? Do you just put it in a closet somewhere? I don't know. But now David has to decide. Well, here's a very interesting thought here. Now stay with me here.
David, for whatever reason, and we don't know, David chooses to place the ark in a man's house. And the man's name was Obed-Edom. Obed-Edom.
Now who is Obed-Edom? We don't know. That's the funny part.
Now, I've conferred with 2 Hebrew scholars, one out of Gordon Conwell Seminary in Los Angeles, the other one in Boston.
Gordon Conwell's in Boston. The other one's in L.A. And I asked them about this. They said, why was Obed-Edom picked? They didn't know either, so I didn't feel so stupid.
But they could not figure out why a man who basically up to this point is fairly obscure is picked to have the presence of God in his house. How does that work?
Now, actually, it's a pretty cool thing when you think about it. You know, it's one of the things the kids, I'm sure, talked about when they went to school. You know, hey, we got the ark at the house. Want to come see? It's like a show and tell thing.
So for 3 months, he's got the presence of God
In his house. Now, they're preparing for the festival.
They're getting ready. This is going to be a nationwide event. And it's going to be a pretty unusual thing. And in 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 18, there is a list of the porters that they were going to need for this celebration. Now,
Let me explain to you the job of a porter. You actually have a better point of reference over here than we do in the States.
because a porter in biblical days was a janitor, a custodian. So you're familiar with what the job of the porter is. And the Bible gives a list of men that volunteered to be a porter. Their job was to clean the place up. cleaning, sweeping, painting, getting everything ready for this festival. Would you like to know who volunteered to be a porter? Obededom. Now, I thought that was a bit strange when I first read it. Didn't make any sense. Why would Obededom volunteer to be a janitor? Didn't make any sense. I don't know if he thought maybe because he was returning the favor that David let him keep the ark or something. I don't know. It's not clear, so I don't want to read anything into it. But it seemed to me just a bit strange. Now remember, the ark has not left his house yet. It's still in the house. But Obed-Edom's saying, you need somebody to clean up? You need somebody to clean the bathrooms? I can do that. Not that big a deal. I'll do that. Okay. In 1 Chronicles chapter 15 as well, the 16th, 17th, and 18th verses, there's another list. See, for this festival, for this celebration, they needed a praise and worship team. They needed some singers, like we had up here tonight. Would you like to know who volunteered to be one of the singers? Obed-Edom. Now, how does that work? 1 minute, he's in the bathroom cleaning the toilet. He cleans up, he runs out here, runs up on the platform, and is going to sing in the praise and worship team. What's up with that? How does that work? Now, that made even less sense than him volunteering to be the janitor. That made any sense. Okay. Now, remember, the ark has not left his house. It's still his house. Could it be, and I can't, so don't ask me. I'm just going to throw it out there. Could it be that in these last couple of months, something's happened to this man? I don't know that. I'm just throwing it out. Something happened. I don't know what it is. But it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because you see, for 3 months, he had the presence of God in his house. Boy, I wonder what that does to people. Interesting, isn't it? 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 21 lists the harp players. They needed people who play instruments. They'd have people sing. They'd have people play instruments. Would you like to know who volunteered to play the harp? It's Obed-Edom. Who is this guy? We don't even know who he is. But suddenly, out of nowhere, some guy shows up. 1 minute, he's in the bathroom, cleaning the toilet. He runs up here, puts on his Madonna mic, and he's over here singing and playing at the same time. Now that's an interesting thought, isn't it? You can't play Obed-Edom. I know. I'll figure it out. How hard can it be? Just give me a day, I'll figure it out. See, when I went to New York, I learned how to play the guitar in 1 day. You know why? Because I had to. I didn't have anybody else to play. Now, I can't play well, but I can play loud. That's important. But I make up, I can make up for volume what I lack in quality. Just like most musicians I know. I don't mean nothing by that, but. So you've got 1 minute, he's in the bathroom. The next minute, he's up on the platform singing and playing in the praise and worship team. What's this guy? We don't know. All we know is that for 3 months, he had the presence of God in his house. That's all we know. That's really all we know. Well, when I was a little kid, you don't know me, and that's okay. You don't have to. But see, when I was a little kid, a long time ago, there was a man. He was just a neighbor. He wasn't an evangelist. He wasn't a preacher. He's a nobody. He worked in a machine shop in St. Petersburg, Florida. You know what's funny?
He still works at that same machine shop. I saw him at Christmas. He saw a little boy sitting on a corner. And that little boy had been sitting on that corner for 3 days. Because the little boy's mother had left him. And the mother never came back. I was the boy. And when my mother walked away from me, she said, "You wait here." And I did. She never came back. And the next time I saw my mother was 7 years ago. They found her dead in the street. Now I'm going to tell you something. There was a lot of people that drove by me those 3 days. A lot of people walked by me those 3 days. You know how many people stopped? Just one.
And who would have ever thought that day? Please don't miss this.
Who would have ever thought that day when the little boy was picked up off the street that all these years later he'd be standing on the other side of the world doing what I do today? Who would have ever thought that? Nobody. Nobody. You know what the man did? When he saw me the third day, him and his wife picked me up. They got me some food because I hadn't had any food or water for 3 days. I still have a deformed rib cage right now from malnutrition when I was a little boy. That day, not the next day, not 2 days later,
That day,
he paid my way and sent me to a Christian youth camp. Now remember, I'd never been in church in my life. I'd never been around church. And I was sitting in the back of a chapel service. It was Wednesday night. I still remember it very well. And I was very quiet. I had a deformed face. I've had to have several surgeries. Just, I think it looks bad now. Should have seen it a long time ago. So I was very quiet. I was very introverted. I just read books. I stayed by myself and read books when I was little. And I was sitting in the back with my head down. Because that's how I spent most of my life. And when the man said, that was preaching, "If you need Jesus, come to the front," I didn't understand that. That was very abstract for me. See, we speak in abstracts in this business a lot, don't we? Nobody understands us but us. And see, some of us don't even understand us.
and when the man said, "If you need Jesus, come to the front," I didn't understand that.
But I felt, please get this, I felt something that I had never felt before. I can't stand here tonight and explain that to you. I wish I could. I can't. I've thought about it. I've tried. I can't. I can't explain it. I can't describe it. But I felt something. Even as a little boy, I've never been to church in his life. I felt something, and I got up from the front, and I came up here, and I knelt down. Some of you will understand this part, some of you won't. But there was a lot of kids that responded to the invitation that night. And as in youth camp, they usually have counselors that come up and bring them kids. And every kid that came to the front had a counselor, except me. And I didn't understand that. I looked around because I heard everybody pray with everybody. But nobody